All right, in today's episode, we sit down with Ryan Tillman. He's running for governor of California 2026. What? Yes, I just said that. Ryan is a law enforcement officer in California. He runs a YouTube and Instagram channel called Breaking Barriers, where he breaks down law enforcement videos. So he is literally trying to break down barriers between law enforcement and the public. His heart is in the right place. He's a man of faith, and he is running as an independent in California to try to bring people back together. He's got a great vision. He's a great speaker and a great dude. Let's go. Hey, welcome to the North Idaho Experience, a podcast for the people in North Idaho and those who are North Idaho curious. These are the stories of those who call North Idaho home, except for today's a little different. And if you're thinking about making North Idaho your home, give our real estate team a call. We would love to help you make that move up here. Special guest today, Ryan Tillman. Dave's going to drop the intro. Let's go.
Yeah, so a little diversion today. We'll say if you're in California or you plan on moving to California or you want to stay there, we're going to tell you to listen to this podcast because this is a shelter-in-place podcast. So we talk to a lot of people that want to move out of California, Oregon, Washington, a lot of these states, and honestly, the majority of people that move up to North Idaho, it's politically motivated. And Ryan is a police officer with Chino PD.
That's right.
And he has also recently announced a run for the governor of California.
Yes, sir.
So we watched Ryan. We've watched him on Breaking Barriers on Instagram, where he breaks down a lot of law enforcement videos. And also Ryan has spent the good part of the last decade trying to bridge that gap between law enforcement and the community. Grew up kind of a self-made guy. He'll talk a little bit about his story, but we want to talk a little bit about Ryan today, a little bit about his background so we can get to know him, but we are going to talk on a lot of sensitive political topics, specifically because Ryan is taking on that run for governor. So really important if you're considering that, if you think that California needs some change, you want to see the community be united, and somebody that has a vision for that. We got a lot of questions, a lot of sensitive questions that we'll ask you about and let you elaborate that. So Ryan, thank you.
Man, thanks again, fellas, for having me. It's obviously this has been on the calendar for at least a month and a half now, and there's certain things on the calendar that I look forward to, and this was one of them. So thanks for having me.
Cool. And this is your first time in North Idaho?
North Idaho, yes.
All right. What do you think?
I've been close to the border, but not in North, which is a story for a different day. But no, it's good. It's been great. We went golfing this morning and got to see Dave kill a chicken, and
that was a mishap. It's a little bit. I was off on that one. I did get a birdie though.
You did get a birdie,
allegedly. You got a birdie and a chicken. It's a good
I think
day.
we said it was figuratively.
Well, when you first told that, I was like, is this some type of golfing terminology? I'm not a big golfer, right? And I was like, is that like a birdie? What is that?
No, that's actually like a dead chicken that you can
hit a chicken with a golf ball.
Yeah,
okay.
Something you can eat.
Noted. Yeah.
No, Ryan, tell us a little bit about your background, kind of, how you got to start and kind of about your family, kind of where you've worked and kind of what brings you up to the point that you're planning on running for governor.
Yeah, there's a lot. And obviously this is a podcast. I don't want to be too long-winded, but I am born and raised Californian, grew up in Rialto and San Bernardino. So you guys are familiar with those areas.
That's your old hood, huh?
Yeah, that's your old hood for sure.
San Bernardino.
Rialto, San Bernardino. And I had two good, loving parents, Nancy and Earl, middle class, hardworking people. And they raised me and my two siblings, my older sister, my younger sister. And if you ask me, they did a phenomenal job. They really gave us everything we need. They were present every time at everything we had, all of my sporting events. And the reason I say that's important is because the people in my life, my friends, didn't necessarily have that same luxury. Most of my friends grew up with single parent homes. So most of my buddies never had dad's presence in their lives. And so I really got to see exactly what it was like to have good present parents in the home. And I really think attributed to who I am now. So I went to school at Rialto High School, played football there. I was a starting quarterback there. I got thrown into the fire as a sophomore on varsity, got to start, and it was awesome. I never forget the game they threw me in the game because the starting quarterback got hurt on varsity. They threw me in there, and the first pass I threw was like a dead strike in the end zone, and everybody thought I was like the savior of my football team. And then we lose every game after that. So, but it was a good feeling while it lasted.
Yeah.
And so had that opportunity. I ran track. I left high school, or once I graduated high school, I was scheduled to go to Fresno State, and I didn't have a football scholarship. We had a lot of really good football players on our team, but we had 5 different head coaches in 4 years. So we never really had good structure, but we had a lot of talent. And the school that I went to, Rialto High School, is one of those schools where a lot of the guys I knew, like we had guys that were on probation. There was a game, we showed up on a Friday night, 4 guys were gone, and we found out they all went and committed armed robberies.
Oh, shit.
All of them were tried as adults, and so that was the last time I ever saw them. That was the type of school I went to, so it wasn't like no walk in the park. And I bring that up because when I went to college to play football, it was much different than where I was from. I had the opportunity to go play football at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, at UNLV. So I got out of the neighborhood and got to see the world from a completely different perspective. But I walked on, never got the scholarship. So I had to work hard to get that scholarship because that was my only chance at really just doing college to its fullest. So me and my best friend, we had the opportunity. Instead of going to Fresno State, coach comes from UNLV, says, we'll allow you to come on as a walk-on, what's called a preferred walk-on. So I didn't have to try out. I was already on the team, but I still had to earn everything that they gave me. So we were the first one on the field, the last one off. We were working full-time jobs to make sure that we can pay for our education for the first year and a half. Like, we literally busted our butt. And then on top of that, all the scholarship guys, they got what's called the training table. So after we practiced, all the guys that played, that were on our team, they would get this nice catered meal, barbecue, like the best of the best. And meanwhile, all those walk-ons were there sitting there just watching these guys eat. Like, it's kind of low-key slavery if you ask me. But, so anyways, like, we did that. And it was just a unique experience because it's like, for the first time in my life, I'm thinking like, man, like, I work just as hard as these people, but yet I don't get what they get. And I'm actually better than some of these people, but yet because of who they knew, it started teaching me how to be resilient. It started teaching me that, what it truly means to be the underdog. And I started learning how to fight real young, like fight for something that I wanted. So fast forward, I ended up getting a scholarship about a year and a half into a full scholarship, full ride, paid for the rest of my college. And that really was the first moment in my life where I was like, man, like, it feels good to work hard for something and actually earn something. And I started realizing, like, man, I'm okay having a chip on my shoulder. It's okay for me to be the guy that nobody expects to do anything. So I graduated from there in 2009 from UNLV, right around the time my dad was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis disease. And so I end up leaving UNLV after I graduated. I come home because I met my wife at the time. She lived in Ontario, California. So I said, I'm going to go home, be with her, and then also help my mom with my dad. And so I did that. I came home and started working in life insurance, and I was working as an assistant manager at Abercrombie & Fitch, which I absolutely hated. It was the worst job ever. Man, I probably got cancer from all the cologne we sprayed in that
dude,
store.
yeah, you can smell those places a mile
Yeah,
coming.
exactly. So I did that for a while, selling insurance, which was kind of cringy now that I think about it. I was a guy that was cold prospecting in malls, asking if I can get a meeting at your kitchen table.
Terrible.
No way.
Yeah, that was me.
That's
That was
terrible.
me. But hey, I learned how to talk people in handcuffs. I mean, you had to overcome objections. You had to learn how to set meetings. You had
Drawbacks.
all that stuff.
Yeah,
the
yeah.
paybacks. Yes.
Yes.
So, and I'm bringing all these things up is because I'm showing you that throughout my life, I've learned certain lessons and I've gained certain experience through certain things that I've done. So I was doing insurance, working as an assistant manager. My wife gets pregnant after we get married about a year into it. And she's like, you need to get a real job. Like, this is not going to cut it. So my dad's best friend was like, you should be you should become a police officer. And I was like, heck no. Like, I don't like police officers, number one. Number two, I've had some bad experiences with cops. Like, I always felt like they were picking on me. And number three, just culturally, we just never, like, as a black guy, we never really liked cops. So it was the furthest thing from my mind. But I started praying about it. I was like, God, show me what you want me to do. Like, if this is the door you want me to walk through, like, I'll go through it. If not, close the door. And when I prayed that prayer, man, it was like the door just flew off the hinges. I ended up getting picked up by the Chino Police Department in 2013. I actually had my choice between Chino and Orange County Sheriff's Department. Like, they were streamlining me. Like, they both asked me the question, hey, what do we have to do to get you to come work for us? Which was not typical. So I said, hey, like, give me a job. Like, whoever gives me a job first, I'll go. And so I ended up choosing to go to Chino. I went to the academy. I excelled in the academy. I graduated number 2 overall in my class. I missed number 1 by 0.04%, which I'm still kind of pissed off about because
It's like
One question.
one shot, bro. One shot. One test. One answer. And I would have got the gun because the top of the class got this like super sick revolver. I was so mad.
A piece of paper.
Bro.
Yeah, I didn't get that.
I was sitting at the graduation salty as ever. Like, man, that should be my gun up there. So anyways, I graduated like number 2 overall. And then I started my field training program back at the station. And at the time, I still didn't know if this is what I wanted to do. I was like, man, I don't know if I like being a cop. I feel like every time I pull somebody over, I'm messing with them. I don't like doing it. And it wasn't until I got off of field training that I was like, man, like this is a cool job. Like I can do this job how I want to. I don't have to do it the way my field training officer told me to do it. I can do it how I want to. And that was right around the time that Michael Brown was killed in Ferguson, and the whole country was going crazy.
Yeah.
And for the first time in my career as a police officer, I was like this man in the middle. Like as a black guy, people within my community and my culture were like, you're a sellout, you're a coon, you're Uncle Tom. But then people within law enforcement didn't necessarily understand why there was this riffraff between the minority community and law enforcement. So I felt like this man in the middle. So I had a conversation with my mom at the time, and my mom was like, you know what, after thinking about everything that situation that happened in Ferguson, she was like, I came to the conclusion that you probably would have did something similar to that officer. And she said, what brought me to that conclusion was the fact that you're a loving dad, you're a loving husband, and at the end of the night, you want to come home to your family. And I was like, wow, like the only reason my mom sees it that way is because her son, her pumpkin is what she calls me, is a cop. And I said, what if I went out there and start trying to humanize people or humanize the profession to get people to see it from that lens? So sure enough, I start thinking about what my mom said. I went to sleep one day. I woke up and I just had this revelation. I said, I want to go out there and start bridging this gap between law enforcement and the community. Like I have a unique vantage point that most people don't have. So I got with the chief of police and a couple captains. I said, this is what I want to do. I want to do a presentation at one of the local churches that's predominantly black. I want to tell the story about who I am, but then I want to put them in scenarios in front of their peers on stage. That's what law enforcement officers deal with on a day-to-day basis, and I want to see how they react, and then we're going to talk about, we'll do a Q&A session. So I had already had it all scripted out, all planned out. My chief and them were super supportive of it. We did it, and it was a hit. Like, everybody at that church was like, man, this was good. Like, it had all these questions, everything. So that was kind of like the start of me focusing on this, bridging the gap between law enforcement and the community. And that continued to evolve. I started making content online, as you guys are well aware of. Anytime critical incidents came, people would hit me up, celebrities would hit me up, law enforcement officers would hit me up. But what was interesting is, as this was going on, some of my peers were the ones that were hating on me the most.
Right.
And it was because I'm a new officer, you don't know your day job, what are you trying to do? You're just trying to brown nose. And it was never about that. For me, it was always about, like, how do I bridge this gap? Like, I don't want to work in a profession where I feel like people just hate me every single day. So I had to, like, learn how to drown out that noise in the background. But I brought all that stuff up earlier to you guys about me walking on is because those were the times that started to create this resiliency. That I was like, I don't care what other people say. I have a mission in my mind. I got to accomplish the mission regardless of what people say. So I just kept my head down and kept pushing. And over time, doors continued to open. I started realizing why God had brought me into this profession and what he wanted me to do. And then what was cool is, as it continued to evolve, officers started to reach out to me that were involved in critical incidents. Like, hey, I can't make this public, but could you break down my video? Because, I've been taking scrutiny and I just want to know your opinion. Or I would do a breakdown on an officer's video, not even know this person. And like, they would hit me up on the side like, man, you did a breakdown on my video. Thank you so much. You're the only one that gave me an objective opinion about it. From my man, what's his name? From the Breonna Taylor incident. I don't know why I'm drawing a blank. Oh, John Mattingly. He hit me up, said, like, you're the only one of the only ones that gave me a fair breakdown from your video, to all sorts of different people. So it just continued to evolve into, like, man, I grew a pretty good reputation for myself. And now, having been in the profession for over almost 13 years and living in a state like California that's deeply divided beyond just law enforcement in the community, Me and my family were thinking about, like everybody else, to leave California. But I've always said, like I said, nobody ever leaves California because it's an ugly state. California is one of the most beautiful places to live in this world. But because of the politics, we have made it one of the worst places to live. And going back to me being a fighter since I was young, I've always been a fighter. So I said, you know what? Screw it. Let's run for governor. You know, I'm tired of the quote unquote politicians. I'm tired of people trying to do it this way. I've always been somebody that pushes the thread or whatever. So let's go after it. And so that's what brings me here today.
Or is there a need for that there? Is there a problem with the current governor? I mean, are there issues?
Not at all. Not at all, actually. It's phenomenal.
No.
Hey, I have a question. In your breakdowns, is there common themes that came up in when you're breaking down these law enforcement videos? Misconceptions, you know, you're seeing it from a different side. What'd you get out of that?
Great question. So in my breakdowns, one of the things that I realize the most is that use of force is never designed to be pretty. I always tell this to people. What use of force do you know is ever going to be pretty? None of them.
No.
It's not designed to be pretty. But we live in a society that makes you feel like it should look okay. But use of force is not designed to look okay. So what happens is you have a use of force that occurs. It goes viral because of how it looks or how it's perceived. And so all this damage is done, even though that use of force could have legitimately been justified. And usually 98% of the times, these uses of forces are justified. I would even say 99% of the time they're justified, but they look bad. So the common theme that I started to see was that these false narratives are being spread based on how something looks, absent of facts. And as police officers, we've been our own worst enemy. One of the reasons why we've had such a discourse between law enforcement and the community is because we have failed to educate communities about what we do and why we do it. Back in the day, what officers would do is they would go use force, take names and numbers, and then go back to do their day job and wouldn't give any type of clarity to the communities that they served. So what happened there is you went and used force, everybody's mad, it looks bad, but yet we're like, because we're above the law, per se, in the view of from the perception of the people, they just think we don't care, even though we really do care, but we've never felt like we had a need to educate them. So now with all the video, it's our responsibility to say, hey, look, this is what we did, this is why we did, and this is how it occurred. And once you start clearing up those misconceptions, people are like, oh, wow, it makes a lot of sense. And so when I started doing breakdowns, I started realizing that we were actually curving, like actually making an imprint, we were actually changing people's perception about how they view law enforcement. Like just before you guys walked in, Dave was listening to me. I was listening to a voice note that I got on Instagram, and the guy that sent me a voice note, he was somebody that was a huge naysayer of law enforcement, but he's been following me over time, and he knows that I call balls and strikes. And now that guy has become one of my biggest sounding boards of defending me and defending police officers because of me just educating them about the videos that they're watching.
That's awesome.
Do you think one of the biggest issues because I see this happen all the time, right? An incident happens, there's very little information, very little explanation, there's never any follow-up. And it's the same thing from a government level. Like from the governor, when there's issues that happen, when there's something that's politically polarizing, nobody ever breaks it down. Nobody ever gives the information to explain to the public why or to justify what they do, right? It's like a parent when you tell your kid, like, hey, you can't do that. And they say, why? And they go, because I said so. That doesn't teach the kid anything.
No. I have a course that I call Explain the Why. And I do this for officers. I actually do it for school officials too. And explaining the why is simple. It's explaining why you're doing whatever you have to do. Now, obviously, there's times where you can't explain the why. I mean, whether it's you got to keep something secret or whatever, confidential, okay, you can't explain the why. But 9 out of 10 times, anytime we have any type of interaction with somebody from the public, you can explain the why. And usually if you explain the why, it gets rid of this void in their mind of what's going on, and stops them from filling in the gaps with false information. So to your point about government, yes, you're absolutely right. We're talking about immigration right now. I'm going to move it to immigration. Immigration is something that I think a majority of people in the United States would agree it's been a good thing, but it's also comes with regulations. And we have gotten away from regulating immigration the way it was designed to. And it's not one person's problem. It's assortment of different presidents that have allowed it just to get out of control. So we currently have a president that said, hey, look, this is what I'm going to do, and this is how it's going to go down. So they've been using the phrase promises made, promises kept. He's doing exactly what he said he was going to do, hypothetically speaking. I think what could happen and what should happen is that people need to be educated on how we are going to regulate immigration, why it's important to have these regulations in place, but then also give a place of clarity on how we can be better in the future moving forward as it relates to immigration. If you can do those three things, now you're always going to have the people that are always going to have something to say. So I'm not really worried about those people. I'm focused on the people that don't really understand how immigration works, why it's perceived things are going this way, but we can still, if through a little bit of education, move them to a certain place and say, you know what, I understand why we need to do this. And I understand that this is better the better route to go. If we can start educating people, you're not going to see a lot of the polarizations, but it's beyond that now. A lot of politics now has become more about sound bites, and it's a us versus me mentality. We're going to do this because we want to win. We're going to do this because we can. And that's what a lot of this fighting going on between the left and the right, regardless. And you know who gets forgotten the most? The people.
Yeah.
Well, and I think what you're talking about is accountability. And I say this as a dad, a coach, a mentor, or a trainer. It's really easy to hold people accountable when the expectations and standards are very clearly outlined and understood. And if you line those out from the front, the accountability part isn't very difficult, as long as people understand what it is you're doing and why.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, right now, obviously, immigration is the hot topic, right? If you're watching this podcast, like, you know, current events, we just had a lot of the quote unquote riots, you know, protests going on down in LA, Seattle, all sorts of different places. We just had Iran and Israel strike each other. Like it's nutty right now, right? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of stuff going on. When you talk about, I have a hard time believing even people that oppose Trump's deportations. I would have a hard time with anybody that's even protesting say that being able to walk across a border and get benefits is good for the country, right? Mm-hmm. So what is all these people that are out there right now? What are you seeing in terms of what's the motivation? Is it the sympathetic, empathetic side to, oh, we saw this one where they separated a family? Is this more of a cultural thing? Is this more of where exactly does it fall? Why are people out here right now doing this?
So I think a lot of it falls on misinformation on both sides of the equation. I learned the biggest lesson about misinformation by being a police officer. How many times have all of us have been in law enforcement in some capacity throughout our profession? How many times have we gone out there and used force and the community is not aware of what we were working on? All they see is the force that was used, and then they start to fill in the gaps and the voids of what actually happened.
Yep. They're pointing guns. Well, there's a reason, right?
It's our fault, though. As agencies in an age, we have to recognize it's all about instant gratification, and whoever gets the message out first wins.
Correct.
You have to fill, if there's a void of information, it gets filled with conjecture and misinformation.
Correct.
So you got to get in front of it.
Correct. So I'd never forget, we did I can't remember what the call was, but it was a pretty important call. We had SWAT out. I was on our negotiations team. At the time, I was working patrol, and I had a perimeter spot. And so me and my buddy, we were in a house, and I have a picture of me sitting on the floor with my rifle and everything. We're surrounding this house, and like, it was, you know how it's like, you know, hurry up and wait, the whole hurry up and wait. Like you're there, everything is exciting, and you're there waiting for hours. And so we went on, at the time, it was Chino Connects. And Chino Connects is on Facebook, and it's like the whole community talking about everything. So I'm like, I wonder what they're saying on Chino Connects about what is going on. And everybody's like, I heard there's a bomb. I heard that they like all these things, that it was completely the furthest from the truth. But what they were doing was they were filling in the voids of what they believed,
right,
or somebody threw something out there, and then everybody else adds on to it. It's like the game of telephone.
Yeah.
So it's very, very similar when we talk about immigration, and we're talking about some of these things that we've been seeing, kids being pulled out of school or parents being pulled out of school. It's very hard to find accurate information anymore in this digital age that we live in. If you are in a sounding, like say your echo chamber is liberal media, then you're going to believe one narrative. If your echo chamber is right-leaning media, then you're going to start believing another thing. And then trying to find the truth in that is a very, very difficult thing to do. Because what happens is you get two different sides. You get the side on the left side, like, hey, they're pulling kids out of schools, they're pulling parents out of schools while they're going to school, so forth and so on, and it's completely wrong. Then you go to the right side. The right side is like, well, no, they were looking for a very, very dangerous guy, and this is the only place that they can grab him at because they weren't allowing them to pull him from the local jails. And now we are forced as civilians to figure out, okay, what's true and what's not.
Somewhere in the middle. The truth is somewhere in the middle most of the time.
We've created a theatrical, emotionally reactive society. And what I mean by that is that we present one side, and there's very few outlets that are going to divulge, hey, this is the perspective from law enforcement. This is the perspective from here. That just doesn't happen anymore, right? And it creates that emotion, and it solicits a response that somebody's like, I can't believe that ICE took this girl from her family. There's not the other side of the story.
Correct. So people ask me, where do I stand on it? I always try to bring back balance and common sense. Here's the balance and common sense. I know for a fact that if I am somebody who knows I'm facing deportation, and let's say I've committed some crimes, because that's who this was allegedly started for, is the people that are committing crimes, especially violent crimes, then am I going to be out and just, in front of my yard, just doing whatever I want to do? No, because you know that there's risk of people grabbing you. So what am I going to do? I'm going to probably try to go to a place where I know it's going to be a lot more difficult for them to get me, or they're not going to get me because of where I'm at. So I start looking at it, I'm like, well, I would be at a graduation, because in my mind, you're going to come to a graduation. I don't think that's going to happen. Now, we know as law enforcement, that's a great place to go grab somebody, because you're catching somebody when their guard is down, which shows, okay, that makes sense why somebody would be getting nabbed up at a graduation. That makes sense why somebody may be getting nabbed up out of school, because they're dropping their guard.
They're less likely to be armed.
They're less likely to be armed. And so
you're choosing the time and place.
Choosing the time and place on our terms. The other side to that, though, and this is where I think people on the right fail, is they fail to have a place of compassion and empathy. And what I mean is like, I'm all about making sure that we get back control of our borders. But I always tell people, put yourself and your family in that situation. They got to go back, but it doesn't mean that it's going to make it easy. So go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so you just said that, like, we need to get back to, how do you do that when you've had the normalization of deviance, right? We have normalized a deviant behavior to allow people in and all this stuff, and it's become normal to allow illegal immigration and not, and to pay taxes for certain things and to allow these crimes to happen. How do you get back to the actual normal?
Great question. So it goes back to what I explained earlier. When you go and do those things, when you do that enforcement, somebody needs to be educating people and telling people exactly, almost right on, this is what's going on, this is why we did it, this is how we did it, and do it in a diplomatic way that is taking people off their edge, as opposed to, this is what we're going to do because we can do it. It's almost like playing chess, not checkers. Sometimes we, as law enforcement, I get it, we want to make sure people know, like, hey, we are the enforcers of the law, you're going to listen to us. But I've always operated under this idea, like, you get more bees with honey. Every time I go into the community and I've explained people, we talked about it yesterday. Like, if I'm telling you what's going to happen or what needs to happen or what we just did, and I do it in a way that's not like hostile or confrontational, I usually get what I want. So it's almost we have to get out of our own mindset of saying, I'm going to be so tough and stuff like that, and say, you know what, like, let me just be a diplomat and say, like, this is what we're doing. This is why we have to do it. I went into the school the other day because we've been looking for this person for the last 2 years. We haven't been able to find them. This person has committed this crime, and this crime. And so this was the only place that we were actually able to nab this person. And so we want to make sure it's safe for everybody, safe for our kids. And so we know that there's going to be people that aren't happy about it, but we have to make sure we secure our borders and do it the right way. And we have to get in control of this pretty quickly. You do something diplomatic like that, yeah, you're going to have people that don't agree with you regardless, but more people are apt to hear you. And now with the digital age that we live in, you can have that video on Instagram, Twitter, or X, YouTube, you name it, and people will start to share that. And so, again, we have to be better. My personal opinion is we have to be better at educating people on what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we're doing it.
I mean, that's how you get buy-in, right? And it sounds like you're taking the same principle from breaking barriers and you're going to apply it to this, right? Completely common sense. I love it.
Yeah, you're absolutely
right. It's the same principle, and I think that's gonna get buy-in from the public, and that's what needs to happen is to get lines of communication opened up between government and the public.
Correct.
Yes.
Do you think it would have changed the outcome? I mean, when we're doing something, because I hear what Dave's saying, we've normalized this behavior. Mm-hmm. There's been no accountability for a really long time. We've decriminalized criminal behavior across the country, but especially in states like California. So do you think at any platform and explaining that along the way, it would have changed this visceral, violent reaction that we're seeing in LA?
No, I don't, because there was poor leadership in LA. So you have poor leadership that is more concerned about look at me, look what's going on, as opposed to let me actually protect the people that I serve there. You have people like Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass who are trying to say, oh, well, it's not as big as you think it is. My response to that is it doesn't matter how big it is. It could be, a half a mile. If we're getting cars vandalized, police attacked, spray graffiti, that is unacceptable. So it could be a half a mile to 2 miles, but they kept trying to downplay it because they were saying, oh, well, it's not as big as they're making it seem, but it doesn't matter how big it's made to be seen. They should have been on the ground saying, you know what, we will not stand for this. Even if they absolutely despise Donald Trump, this is our city, this is our town, take control of it. But they were more so focused on trying to look at the bad guy here, look at this president who's doing this, as opposed to standing up for their people. And so to your point earlier, I think if you had some good leadership, good diplomacy, it could have been avoided. Mm-hmm. But that's why I'm running for governor, because we don't have that right now. We have more people focused on either winning a presidential election in the next presidential election, or we have people that are more so concerned about pleasing everybody without doing what's best for the majority.
That's good. I also think it's so hard, that accountability piece. They don't want to recognize the first step. First step in recognizing you have a problem is saying, we've got a problem.
Yes.
And that's really hard for anybody that's been in politics for a long period of time to say, we have a problem, because they've been there for so long. Mm-hmm. Then why haven't you corrected it?
Correct.
Right? You don't get to say there's a problem now, and now this is to blame, when you've been in a position to fix it for, how long has he been the governor of California?
Almost 8 years.
Yeah.
8 years.
What's the limit in California?
8 years.
Is it 8 years?
That's why we have
God
the
bless
So he's out no matter what. Can we backtrack a little bit? So you're running as a Republican. Have you always been?
No, I'm running as an independent.
Oh, independent. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good.
So, which is unconventional.
Yeah.
I've been saying from the very beginning, our campaign is going to be unconventional, from everything we do, from the content we put out to the events that we host, and even the way we run this race. And the reason why I want to run as an independent, if you talked about my organization, Breaking Barriers United.
Yeah.
If you had to tie a political affiliation to that organization, it would probably be more appropriate to classify it as an independent than it would be a Republican or Democrat.
Especially if the premise is breaking barriers, right?
Correct.
If you grab onto one of those, you have now created barriers.
Correct.
Right?
So you have to. And so I think that there is a lane in not only California, but in our nation, where we can actually start seeing some more of that. I think there are more people closer to the middle than on the far left or the far right.
Yeah.
But we live in a society that has made you pick a side and is forcing you to go with whatever they have under their agenda, even though you may not like it. So we are now getting away from actually looking at the person and the policies and more so focused on my side winning. I was on Brandon Tatum's podcast recently, and I said this. I said, it's like the Bloods and the Crips. Who wins? Nobody ever wins. Mm-hmm. You're doing things in the name of your gang, but nobody really wins. You're doing it to push your gang forward. And so it's not to say that I think that, I would obviously align way more on the conservative end of the spectrum. Absolutely. But if I truly wanted to break barriers, if I truly wanted to be somebody that can create a new path for unity, I find that through an independent route. Now, it's uncommon. It really hasn't been successful, but I think the timing is different than we've ever seen in our nation before. I read a book about what makes business successful. And there's 3 key components that make business successful. You have the product, you have money, and you have timing. Well, I was always under the assumption that any business is successful if you have a great idea and you have a lot of capital behind it. Timing is good. But when I read the book, what stood out to me was timing was actually number 1. You can have a great idea, but if you have no money and the timing sucks, it's going to be a terrible idea. You can have an okay idea, but if you got a lot of money and no timing, it's still not going to do that much. But if you have a semi-okay idea, but you have the money and really great timing, it will be like that business will win every single time. And we saw that with Lyft. We saw that with DoorDash. There's a lot of Airbnb. If you look at when those businesses were started, it was because the timing was great. So I bring that analogy up because it's the same thing with our political climate. The timing is great for somebody to run in this middle lane and get all these people who are on the left or the right and say, you know what, we want something different.
So that brings up something, and this is a barrier that you're going to have to break, right? Because as an independent, people are still going to ask you the most polarizing question: Who did you vote for in the presidential election?
Yeah, so I voted for Donald Trump in the presidential election.
Right. And you know that there's people that are going to look at that. We talked about this earlier too, is that there are people that voted for Kamala Harris because they hate Trump, not because of policies, not because of anything else. He's a very polarizing individual. So, I mean, how do you talk to people? How do you break down that barrier with people that despise Donald Trump and feel like, you know, you're his reckoning, that you're really just a Republican, that, you know, how do you break that down for people?
Great question. So first and foremost, let's talk about why I voted in general. I think you served in the military. We have a lot of people that have served. You know, they fought so we have the ability to vote. And I there have been elections where I haven't voted before, but as I've gotten older and more mature, I realize that, you know, and how am I going to sit here on the sidelines and complain about things if I'm not even willing to vote for something? And I think what happens is people get to this place where they just get so caught up in, oh, well, my vote doesn't mean anything, so I'm not even going to do it. But it really does. It really does mean something. So that's number one. Number two is when I say I voted for him, I didn't vote for him. I voted for what was more in line with my values. And, you know, I had a conversation with a cousin of mine, a family member, who said that, you know, her specific thing was like, you know, what was her, or she used a phrase, I can't remember what it was, but like her bottom lines were different than my bottom lines. And she's absolutely correct. The bottom lines for me as a Christian man aligned more on the right side of things than they did the left side of things as a Christian. Now, it doesn't mean that anybody's on the left side of the spectrum is wrong. That's the great thing about living in the United States of America. You have the freedom to view things how you want to and vote for who you want to view or vote for who you want to vote for. So just as I'm not going to criticize you for voting another way, you shouldn't criticize me for how I vote. Because again, how I voted was not based on a person, it was based on a value system and a structure that largely comes from my Christian values. But that's one of the reasons why I'm even trying to break away from that and say, I don't want somebody to automatically assume that because I might have voted for this person, that it automatically means that I'm this type of way, because it's not true.
Do you think that law enforcement helped shape that bottom line as well?
For me, yeah, absolutely. And so I think law enforcement helped shape my bottom line from a political standpoint when I started to see firsthand the byproduct of decisions made at the Capitol and the White House.
Yep. I asked that because the same thing happened to me. I don't, my entire family is liberal. And I didn't really think about it when I was younger, but I got into law enforcement and the exact same thing. You see firsthand on the street how those policies shape things.
And I will clarify too with your family, like it's not because at the same time, you know, hearing that you're running for independent and being able to want to breed unity and bring people in from both sides, I get nervous using the word like liberals and that's a bad person, right? Or that's something that I don't agree with any of your values. Right. You know, Seth, he talks about his family, like very, very liberal. They're at a point where politics will dictate relationship.
Yep.
And that's difficult. It's difficult for him. He tells me about it all the time. He's like, man, it sucks. Like I have a different political view and all of a sudden relationships break down. And that's where I think politicians, that's where I think, I gotta start pointing at you, politicians.
This guy.
Where that stuff, this guy, exactly. Where that stuff starts to break down, right? You're choosing, because you choose a political affiliation, you then no longer have relationships with the other side. This has happened with my friends in high school and other people, and I've seen it tear stuff down. My mom votes liberal. She is one of the people that, man, I have learned to respect my mom so much since she moved up here, because she still very much has a deep left-leaning side, but it doesn't affect our relationship. I'm really thankful for that. And so I think that's something as running for governor, you have to realize that trying to bring people together to where it's not, it doesn't dictate your relationship or how you think about somebody because they vote a different way. Because when people start doing that, you alienate yourself and everything's closed off.
It's the same for me. Most of my family is what we say liberal, you know. But I've always said too is like, you shouldn't go to Thanksgiving dinner and be at odds with people because of politics. But that's the environment we live at now.
It's a little fun.
It is a little fun, depending on the family.
Not for me. I'm the only one.
Yeah, not for me.
And not when my cousin says to me next to my aunt, who he knows hates guns, like, well, Seth, how do you feel about AR-15s? I'm like, bro, why would you?
Yeah.
Why would you ask
that question? And it's not fun because of that. But so we've gotten to a place where you can't even have a different opinion anymore.
Yeah.
And I wrote a book called Happy Eyes, and it's Happy Eyes becoming all things to all people without compromising who you are. And I truly believe that you should be able to be all things to all people and not have to compromise who you are. If you don't like guns, that's fine.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that you don't have to like me or I don't have to like you. If you may be part of a certain community, that's fine. Like, I'm not your judge. You're not my judge. But politicians have made it to where you now have to pick a side. And if you don't align with what the party says you should align with, then shame on you. You are our enemy and we're going after you.
Yep.
And I'm trying to eradicate that mindset. And I think we can do it. And trust me when I say this, both sides of the equation are equally guilty.
Oh, yeah.
I think your biggest challenge is going to be the media.
Oh, yes.
And coming in as an independent, are they both going to hate on you? I don't know. I mean, that's going to be probably the biggest challenge.
So yes, you're right. But the nice thing about living in 2025 in this digital age, you have stuff like this. We now have an ability to combat the media. I mean, like him or not, President Trump gave the blueprint. He said, look, he was on Joe Rogan's podcast, Patrick Bet-David's podcast, you name it. He was going down the line. Meanwhile, you had Kamala Harris, who was going away from him because she was afraid of what she might sound like on there. Mm-hmm. But he went where the people were. So when people keep saying, well, yeah, you're not going to get the money from the political parties. Yes, that's true. But my thing is if I could gain enough attention from the people, then that's all I care about, because those are the people that can actually, money begets money. And if I got 300,000 people to give me $1 a month, that's $300,000 a month to help us. And that's a whole nother story about how much money it requires to actually be successful in a campaign. I think
I've got that on my list. I was going to get there.
I hate the fact.
It's crazy.
Hate the fact that you have to raise so much money, because think about all that money that you can do, really what kind of good you can do with all this money.
Yeah. We just talked about that this morning. I absolutely hate in our current political system, once you get to a certain point, if you can't raise enough from private campaign contributions, you're never going to get elected. That's why people are forced to align with one of the two parties in our two-party system, where I tend to be a fiscal conservative, and I align a lot with that. But there's a lot of Republican policies that I'm not in favor of, but I tend to vote that way because I like everything else. But then I feel like candidates, as soon as you put an R or a D, you have to own them all. Yeah. Even if that's not what you're passionate about. But that's interesting. I think your biggest challenge when you talk about that business book you read, I think your product's going to be good. I think your timing's on point. Money. Startup capital.
Yes.
Because how are you going to fight that tendency for politicians to take private campaign contributions from big names who immediately expect a return on that investment?
So the best thing that we can do is fight it. I compare it to David and Goliath. My slingshot is this stuff that we're doing right now.
Right.
I've been doing digital media and marketing for the last 10 years. I know it inside out. I know how to make videos go viral. I know what podcast you need to be on. And this is something that my political opponents can't do. They can go on a podcast, but it doesn't mean they can't sound like a politician. They won't sound like a politician.
Right.
They're going to go on there sounding exactly like a politician. That's something that they don't have. The other thing is I truly believe that we have an opportunity to start getting people big donors to start getting behind somebody who's not affiliated. So while everybody sees the political arms, the Republicans and the Democrats, what I see is a whole bunch of people that have a whole lot of money that don't want to align with the Republicans or the Democrats for fear of getting counseled. So now I can go approach all those people and say, hey, look, you can now donate. You can now support the cause and be a part of the cause, and you won't get counseled because you're coming across as being somebody in the middle. So now it's just incumbent upon me to go find those people who are willing to give the money. And we've already done it. The other night I was looking at, we had our first campaign kickoff last Saturday. It was our campaign launch party. It was a phenomenal success. And after that, 2 days ago, we raised like 20 grand in one day, which is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And now, mind you, it takes a lot more than that to win an election, especially a statewide election like this. But I was looking at, you can go and look up, there's a transparency app where you can look up how much money campaigns are raising. And I'm already on, we're already going pretty quickly as far as raising money because people are believing in the vision. And so I believe we have a whole year before the primary election. So we can continue to gain enough popularity. We can continue to come at you from every angle. I think we have the opportunity to disrupt the system. And I think it's a win-win. If we win the election, then all of these people from Idaho, y'all can come back to Cali. It's going to be safe for y'all to come back to Cali. But number two, we even if we lose, we still win, because now I want to make it seem like, you know what, where people saw there wasn't a chance, we now see there is a chance in a lane this way.
Do you know who's running? Has anyone else announced?
Oh, yeah, there's like, the list is like 50
There's always a
some odd
bunch.
people.
But are there any like big players?
Big players, I would say my biggest players right now on the Republican side, you have Steve Hilton and Chad Bianco. Those are probably the two biggest names right now. On the Democratic side, you have Tommy Thurman. He's a current state superintendent. You have Kamala Harris, who potentially might be throwing her name in the hat.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, I know. I don't know if she is.
I just don't want to listen.
I would
to
love to
laugh.
see you debate her. That'd be just
Oh, me
fucking
too.
fun.
Me too.
Yeah.
So, but and that's a good point you bring up as far as my contenders. You know, a lot of people. Chad Bianco announced his run probably about 3 or 4 months ago, and Chad is a good friend of mine. And one of the things that's unconventional about us is I'm not going to run any smear campaigns. Like, I'm
Good.
old school.
Good. Nobody hate this.
Yeah, I'm old school. Like, you know, go to the basketball court. I want to beat you on just good old general purpose. I'm better than you, not because I can smear you better than me. So I won't be running any smear campaigns. I won't say anything bad about Chad Bianco. He's actually supported me throughout the years, you know, as a police officer. So I have nothing bad to say about Chad Bianco. The only thing I'll say, though, which is not smearing him at all, is that in order for somebody that may have more of a conservative value system to win this election in California, is you have to be able to appeal to a broad base of people. As a Republican, if you were able to win every single Republican vote in the state of California, you would still lose in a landslide. That's how outnumbered Republicans are to Democrats. So you need somebody that can appeal to a broad base of people. You need somebody that can appeal to Democrats, independents, and there's another class that people forget is a young audience. Yeah. I've been speaking in schools for the last 8 years of my life, up and down the state of California. Guess who's all voting age now? Every single one of those students. So when people say, you know, I like Chad Bianco, that's great, but can he appeal to a broad base of people? And if he can't appeal to a broad base of people, and it's funny, somebody messaged me the other day, and I screenshotted the message because he went on like, you know, it's just not your time yet. I'm all in on Chad Bianco, so forth and so on. I'm like, hey, I completely respect it by all means. But I said, but let me ask you one question. Can Sheriff Bianco, can he appeal to a broad base of people? Meaning, can he appeal to Democrats? Can he appeal to independents? And can he appeal to young people? Did I ever get a response from that person?
Dude, that's a really, really good point. And, you know, like I you know, be down in San Bernardino, we had Chad Bianco just south of us in Riverside. Good dude and everything else, but he does push a very hard line for a very conservative group. And once again, we talk about that extreme right, extreme left. You know, people that are, you have to have that R next to your name. You're not going to get their votes.
Yeah,
right? You're not going to get their votes. So I guess do you have any plans to talk with Chad, do anything publicly with him? Is there anything like that you would be doing down the road?
Yeah, I think there's still a long time. I mean, we have a whole year.
Right.
And I just saw Chad at an event a couple weeks ago. And again, I saw him, I hugged him. Like, I have nothing negative to say about Chad at all, personally speaking, at least. And who knows what could happen. But I always tell people, like, this election is not about Ryan Tillman. If this election was about me, then I would probably be running it completely different. Right. But do we really want to save our state? And if we do, are we willing to play chess and get there but in an unconventional means?
Yeah.
And the problem is that people don't look at things that way. And maybe it's the business owner in me that has learned how to think unconventionally about things as far as accomplishing goals, just doing it with an alternative way. And so when I keep asking people that question, back to that question, can this person appeal to a broad base? The answer is always the same, no. So the next question becomes, well, what is the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. So we're willing to do the same thing knowing that we're going to get the same exact result. Let's try something different. When we had our launch party last Saturday, the best thing about my launch party is and I even said this in my speech, I said, look around. We have Democrats here, we have Republicans here, we have independents here, and we have young people here. I'm one of the only candidates that I know can put together an event like this, keep it cordial, because everybody is here for the one same purpose, to make California the Golden State again, despite your political belief system.
That's pretty cool.
Most people can't do that.
Yeah.
Even at Chad's event, I looked at his event. It was mostly conservative people. And again, it's not a knock on him by any means. So I don't want people to confuse it as a knock. It's just I have a track record of bridging these divides between people. It'd be different if I just said, hey, I came off the beat yesterday and now I want to run for governor all of a sudden.
How do you appeal to people that, a lot of people, I remember hearing this at church one time, right? Not a church that I'm affiliated with anymore, and a church down in California, but I remember being told, hey, if you just vote with abortion, then you'll vote the right side. I mean, that was it. He's like, just pick who is pro-life and you're good. And that leaves out a ton of other things that you can't, that are way more polarizing, right? But the thing is that people they vote off of individual things. We're selfish.
Yeah.
Right. So something that's affected us in our lives, something that, is important to us. We vote off of these one or two issues. How do you appeal to people when they are just focused on one specific issue? Like, it's not
Great
the whole
question.
part, right? They're just worried about those one things.
So number one is having the understanding that you're not going to be able to win everybody.
Right.
So that's first and foremost. But number two is being able to explain to people that, hey, I may not agree with you on this item, but it doesn't mean that I can't try to find some place to meet you in the middle. There are certain issues that I will probably be much different than people are on. But it doesn't mean I can't have compassion and I can't have a spirit of grace and empathy for you and try to find out a way, if it's possible, to meet in the middle. There might be certain issues we can't meet in the middle on, but it doesn't mean I can, just completely neglect how you feel and say, screw you, that's not how it is and stuff like that. No, I can still have to say, hey, I understand that, but this is just how it's going to be done. That right there is more respectable to me, because at least you acknowledge something like a way I feel, as opposed to just completely writing me off. So for me, I think one of the things that I know I have the ability to do is just being able to say, hey, look, if there is a way that we can meet people in the middle, then great. If not, I can still do it in a way with grace, compassion, and empathy and mercy towards it. And the last point I'll bring up on that same topic is that I have learned over the years that I am a Christian. I'm very vocal about that. I have a faith in Jesus Christ. I am not shy about that. I lead with that. But as governor of California, I am not the governor over religion. I'm governor over the people of California. We live in the United States of America. We live in the freest country in the world, which allows you to subscribe to whatever religion you want to, or lack thereof. So it's not my job to come into California and say, hey, all of you guys are now going to follow the same God that I follow, because that's the right way. If Jesus Christ gave us free will to choose him, then why can't I give people the free will to choose what they want to as well? So I have to also keep that at the forefront of my mind. I can still have my value system. I can still believe what I believe as a Christian, but I also have to make sure that, we have to put measures in place that we do what's right for the people of California, despite, what some of us may think.
What do you think? I gotta dive into some issues, unless you guys have something else.
No, go ahead. I'm curious where you're going.
I want to know what are the big three, big couple. What are the things that are on your minds in terms of what is wrong with California? What is it? Is it taxation? Is it immigration? Is it what is it? Homelessness? What is it that's really plaguing California that really needs to be tackled?
So I have 5 top issues, but I'll stick to the 3 to answer.
No, that's fine, dude. All 5. I don't care.
So earlier I said if this election was about Ryan Tillman, my number one issue would be public safety. Why? Because I understand public safety inside out. I understand, how it operates. I understand the needs, but it's not about Ryan Tillman. It's about California. And if we can't fix the money issue in California, then you're always going to have a public safety issue. The economy has to be the number one issue. It has to. If you look at, we've all worked in law enforcement. 9 out of 10 times these crimes were committed. Why? Because there was probably some economic instability within the home, or there was some obviously drug addiction and so forth and so on. So the point is that number one, we have to be able to figure out how we get a hold on this budget. We have a huge deficit, and we also have an unrealized deficit because of all the retirement systems that have been in place. Then we've also stirred up more financial instability through the bullet train. And then they spent $22 billion on homelessness, and we have more homeless people here. So we've wasted money. And then on top of that, we have scared all of you people away. We lost all of our people. We lost businesses. We have lost contributing members to the economic economy the economic economy, or that doesn't make any sense, the economy of California through just people leaving. So what we have to do is, number one, is we have to cut red tape for business owners. There's too much red tape, too much. I'm a business owner. There's no reason I should be having to be double taxed because I have an LLC. So cutting the red tape, we have to be able to incentivize, if you ask me, these businesses to come back. Regardless of how people feel about Elon Musk, regardless of how they feel about Elon Musk, we literally ran out of our state one of the biggest businesses, not just in the history of California, not just the history of the United States of America, but the history of the world. We ran that business out of California. And so when we run that business out of California, we're running that money out of California in many ways. So we have to find ways to incentivize business owners and people that have left to come back. One of the saddest things I hear is when residents have left California, they say, I want to come back, but they can't afford to come back. So if I can incentivize people to come back, then now that's going to stimulate our economy in more ways than we realize. It's going to bring back more business. And then now we start to have more of an influx in our economy. The other thing that we have to do is we have to create more revenue, or we have to create more revenue, new revenue that comes into the state. So we have, what people don't realize is California sits on a lot of oil, and our carbon imprint on the world, if you just took the United States carbon imprint on the rest of the globe, it's very, very minimal, like very, very small amount. So for those people that are like, oh, well, we got to go green. If you really saw the United States' carbon imprint, it doesn't even touch what other countries are putting out. So I think we should start drilling some oil here in California. We have a gold right underneath us that we can sell. Now it produces new money. We start bringing new money into here. I also think that there is a place, people will criticize me on this, but I think there's a place for investing in cryptocurrencies. If we are doing that on a national scale, we're creating cryptocurrency reserves, Bitcoin reserves. Why do you think they're doing that? That's because we're going in a direction where everything is digital. How often do you guys pay with cash? I don't pay with cash that often. And it's beyond the cashless system. All the contracts are going to cryptocurrencies or on these digital ledgers and things like that. So you're starting to see other states. I think Montana was one of them where they're not going to tax you on capital gains of cryptocurrencies anymore. You have Montana. There's a handful of other states that are going there. You also have the cryptocurrency, the Bitcoin reserves. So why not California invest into some of these cryptocurrencies as another way to generate future revenue for our state? So number one is the economy. Number two, that's where public safety comes in. We got to make sure that we find ways to be tough on crime again. It's okay to be tough on crime. Like, I don't know where we got to this place where, oh my goodness, like you got like, no, it's okay to be tough on crime. When I was younger and I got in trouble, like I didn't mess up again if my dad gave me some type of corporal punishment. But if my dad, accountability. But if he was soft, you better believe I was going to test the system again.
Yep. I was telling him, oh, good.
I remember I was working as a cop in California when methamphetamine was decriminalized. I remember the first time I wrote a ticket for a dude with a baggie of meth, and I let him go. And I was like, this is it. We're done.
This is the turning point.
There goes the neighborhood.
There he goes.
I was telling him today, I'm like, Coeur d'Alene PD, man, we've arrested people for one joint.
Oh, yeah.
It's illegal. What? Yeah, it's illegal. I don't know what to tell you. It's a misdemeanor. It's a crime over here. You're going to jail. Can you write me a ticket? I could. But you're going to jail.
I got into an argument. We had a lateral officer come up from California, and I was the sergeant running patrol, and he says, I'm not going to drive around chasing meth pipes. I was like, one, that's what I'm asking you to do, and I want to give you the why. Here's the reason you're going to chase meth pipes around in Coeur d'Alene City, because you catch him with that loaded meth pipe and you take him to jail for that. How many cars don't they burglarize that night? How many neighborhoods aren't they casing? How much how much retail theft are you avoiding with that? You got to get control of it on the front.
Correct.
Crime comes with crime.
Yes.
Right? People that are willing to admittedly commit a crime, they commit other crimes. Right. That's just what it is.
Yep. So we started to do that. They passed Prop 36, which was a good balance between the old way and the new way. and it's more strict on crime. But for me, I think that we can be tough on crime, but I also believe in redemption.
Same.
For those that are ready. And I got to say that second line, for those that are ready, because there are some people that aren't ready.
It has to be their choice.
Exactly. So if you're not ready, then all right, cool. We'll still be tough on you until you're ready. But the accountability piece is huge. I have friends of mine who formerly incarcerated, life sentence. I have a friend of mine, Artie, who had a life sentence, got out of prison, changed his life around. Damon West, another guy. Kwame Kilpatrick, another guy. Alice Johnson, another person. Like, I can go down the list of all these people whose lives were changed. And so, but they were ready for it. So what can we do? Number one is I think we can be tough on crime. I think we shouldn't feel apologetic about being tough on people for committing crimes. And I don't know where we got to this place where we should feel sad. No, you commit a crime, we're going to be tough on you. But we will give you a chance to redeem yourself. So this might be controversial for some, but it's okay. I want to do something which is called a character score. And what a character score would do would mean the moment that you are convicted of a felony, you now have a character score that's assigned to you. It's incumbent upon you to build that character score up. So you go to school while you're in prison, you're doing community service, you go to parole, you're doing good things in the community. You start to build this character score so now, even though you might have to mark felony on your application, you can say, hey, I have a character score of 800. So now it allows you to tell a story without somebody automatically writing you off saying, nope, I'm not hiring any felons. Why do you think these felons keep going out there committing crimes? Well, it's because they can't get a job. The moment you see F, I'm not going to hire you, or most people wouldn't unless they actually want to go beyond. But now this gives them an opportunity to paint a different story for them just at the application process before you have that oral interview. And then it also works on the reverse. If you keep committing crimes, that character score keeps going down. So not only do you have the felony, but now you got a 0. And it's like, this is not somebody we want to work with. And so talking to a lot of my friends who are formerly incarcerated, it says, man, I would love that because now it makes me feel like I do have a legitimate second chance to build myself. That's what true redemption is like, is allowing people to do that. So I say it's controversial because people get into the talks of, well, now you're on the lines of creating this social credit score. But what people have to realize is that when you are a felon, you already have certain constitutional rights revoked from you.
Yep.
So you already don't have certain rights. So if you ask most felons, they would tell you in a heartbeat, man, I would absolutely love to have a character score if it gives me an opportunity to rebuild myself and get an opportunity. So I think that's a good way we can do that when it comes to the public safety. And I do lump in homelessness and mental health. I'm not going to go there unless you guys want. But then the third biggest thing for me is also giving back the power to our parents over their kids' education. We have politicized education. We have brought too much politics into the schools. Let's get back to teaching math, reading, science. Let's stay away from all the other stuff. Stop forcing parents to have to vaccinate their kids to go to school. I don't think it's right. I truly don't think it's right. In 2025, there are enough studies to show that number one, there are some side effects to vaccines. I mean, if you ask me, that's also a common sense thing. I mean, you're introducing foreign bodies into a body that was not designed to take certain things. And so I'm not anti-medicine by any means. So I don't want people to think, oh, he's anti-medicine. But I just think that it's okay for certain parents to say, hey, look, I don't feel comfortable giving these things to my kids. That shouldn't prevent a kid from going to school. So we do need to repeal some of that in our laws, but just be smart about it. And obviously, just if we make certain stipulations or repeals, make sure we have a good justification as to why we're doing it.
Yeah, well, that's a fear tactic, right? I mean, they come out and that was I'm not even going to say the word. That was those couple years, right? I mean, there was such a fear tactic to the point of idiocracy when you're like, okay, hold on. All these things are still happening and you're doing everything right. And all these things are still happening and this person's doing everything wrong. There's no difference here. Or just vice versa. You're still having issues. This person is not. Up here was a completely different world, right? No masks, no nothing.
Can I tell you? So all of our clients, most of our clients, not all of them, are coming from out of state, right? California, Oregon, and Washington. And they give us reasons. And I'll give you those reasons because I think it's important for you to know that,
Please.
especially for your thing. So one is definitely going to be medical freedom, right? We just talked about that with Washington State this morning. Washington has completely gone off the rails. Medical freedom for their families, so they're not forced into anything. Homelessness, huge one. Mm-hmm. Wildfires. Mm-hmm. That's one I want to talk about with you, right? That's near and dear to me. My house burned down in a wildfire in Northern California. I think those are probably the three big. Any other ones that we're getting a lot?
Well, I think homelessness gets assigned to crime, and fair or not, that tends to follow it. I think it's pervasive illicit drug use, which follows with a ton of property crime, and then it makes it unlivable.
It makes it so you can't go downtown. You know, your family can't go downtown. It's visually unappealing, right? When you go into a city park and you've got tents and just trash everywhere because they tend to trash things. So that's like probably one of the bigger ones.
So go ahead.
Yeah, no, and I was gonna say, I guess like overall values. I think a lot of people, especially a lot of Christian people, are feeling like the values of those states no longer match their values.
Yeah. So let me talk about the homelessness real quick. So with the homelessness, what we made the mistake of doing in California is it's a business. If we just really get down to it, it's a business.
Yeah.
And when they came out with that statistic and said that they spent $22 billion on homelessness, but yet we have over 30,000 new homeless people, it's because what they are doing was they are trying to apply a Band-Aid to a situation as opposed to addressing the root cause of the issue. I give a presentation in schools called Beyond Saying No. And the Beyond Saying No presentation is about substance abuse. And the reason it's called Beyond Saying No is because I realized that for years, all we were doing as officers were telling kids to do what as it related to drugs.
Say no to drugs.
Dare. Dude.
Fucking dog.
Oh, yeah, say no to drugs. But what were we not doing? Well, why are you actually turning to drugs in the first place? And if you actually turn to the reasons why they're using drugs, then maybe you can prevent them from using the drugs if you can give them a different outlet. So let's just say, oh, well, I was actually turning to drugs because I'm going through some situation in my household between my parents. Well, maybe we can get you therapy for your parents. Maybe I'm using drugs simply because of the peer pressure. Well, let me teach you how to overcome peer pressure so you make it easier to say no as opposed to just saying no to the drug. So I think we take that same philosophy as it relates to homelessness. What is actually making people homeless in the first place? Well, you have a lot of things. You have domestic violence. It's one of them. You disrupt the economic stability in the home. Now people become homeless. The drug addiction. Obviously now people are not thinking mind. They're not in the right mindset. They're now chasing a drug. When you chase a drug, everything else starts to fall apart. So now we need to start addressing the drug addiction in the first place. So what does that mean? Do we have to maybe tighten up some certain things, tighten up our borders as it relates to fentanyl coming over across our borders? Absolutely. Does it mean that maybe we should be tough on crime because that could potentially prevent them from getting addicted to the drugs? Absolutely. I've heard countless times from people who have been addicted to drugs that say, man, when I was going to jail for a felony, for meth or whatever, like it kept me in there for a while and it allowed me to sober up.
Yeah. How many times have you had somebody come back to you and said, man, and this is probably back in the day because nobody stays in jail in California anymore, but where they say, I'm so glad you took me to jail. It's the only thing that would have got me straight.
Correct.
Because they had some skin in the game after that.
Correct.
And then they're able to go into a process where they can remove that F before it is one.
Correct.
Right? But that was that big correction that they needed.
And so now Prop 36 has kind of done a little bit of that, but that's a good example of addressing the root cause, getting them away from the drug, keep them away from the drug for a while. And now what we do is we follow up and say, let's get them the help that they need. So that's another thing that causes people to go homeless. The mental illness is contributed largely in part of what? The drugs. So if we start being more proactive about what's causing people to be homeless in the first place, then you'll start to see that number start to gradually go down. And this is a huge one, and this is another initiative that I have, which is called the Family First Initiative. A lot of the homelessness is also contributed to the broken homes. Now, number one, you're not teaching financial literacy to kids as they're growing up. So you're talking about long-term structural damage because people don't even know what to do with money. Number two is when you have a broken home, the odds of those kids being successful in their home go way down. The odds of them getting mental illness go way up. The odds of them becoming incarcerated go way up. So what we have done is we have incentivized people to go out there and get on government assistance, EBT. We've incentivized people to go out there and get abortions and things like that. So what my goal is let's say, well, let's focus on the family. What does that mean? Why don't we incentivize people to actually stay together and work on their marriage? Now, I'm not saying it's going to be easy, and I'm not saying I'm forcing you to stay in maybe an abusive marriage, but what I'm saying is that for those that are willing, and we can give you resources through counselors, through therapy, whatever it may be, that we can help you keep that family dynamic together, because it's been proven that if that family dynamic stays together, then the kids are going to be more successful. Now, what if we gave you guys tax incentives when you guys are married 5, 10, 15, 20 years because you're like, man, it's worth it, and we are incentivizing you by giving you access to counselors for that marriage? That's getting back to basics. It's common sense. Right now in California, we have over, it costs about $107,000 for every single incarcerated individual in our system.
A year?
A year. And we have over 90,000 inmates. I went to San Quentin prison about 2 months ago. And as I was talking to these inmates in San Quentin prison, they're about 20 to 24 years old. Every single one of them I talked to, they're like, oh man, I'm in here for a life sentence, so forth and so on. I asked them, hey, how many of you guys had a dad growing up? None. I didn't. Did you? No, I didn't. If your dad was still present in your life, do you think that you would still be in the situation that you're in right now? No, probably not. So if they're telling us that could have helped them out, why are we not incentivizing families to work it out so that way we can drop that? But you know why? Because that's common sense.
Well, and we're doing the opposite. We're incentivizing single motherhood. There was a huge rash of girls that were 16, 17 getting pregnant on purpose because they get paid.
Yes.
You literally get paid not to work.
crazy.
It's incentivizing the complete other direction.
Well, it'd be cool too. You talk about the family. I've always told my kids, we usually take a vacation every year. This year we're going to an undisclosed location. I can't say it because I don't want my kids to see it. Not that they watch this, but
They might.
they might. Yeah, be like, oh, dude, Ryan stayed at our place. We want to watch it. Yeah, but one of the things that I always say is I'm like, when we leave. And people be like, oh, you're taking them out of school? Yeah, I'm taking them out of school. Do you know why? Because school is not their education.
No.
I'm their education. I'm their parent. That's my responsibility. School is a medium to help me educate my children. And parents don't see it. They see it as a daycare and they're like, hey, take my kids and teach them how to deal with life. Mm-hmm. And that's not how it's supposed to go. You're supposed to send your kids there. They're supposed to get tools. Bring back homework, Ryan. Bring back homework to where kids got to come home for 2 hours every night
Shut
and
your
be
mouth.
like, I got to, no, let's do it. Let's do it. I loved it because you know what? Homework, honestly, for me, that was an outlet for me. That was my ability to come home and go like, all right, like I have to do this. Like I have to give some extra effort on my own time, on my own, everything else. I've given my kids homework at home. I love it. And if you disagree, that's totally fine. But I
deeply disagree.
I think it's great for kids, especially for these families where they're not giving them the time, right? You take a parent like Seth who spends a ton of time with his kids and does those things. Yeah, that family doesn't need the homework, right? And those kids are probably going to get through it pretty quick. But there's a lot of families that don't. They don't put the time and effort into the kids. They don't have the time to do those things, and I miss that stuff.
So some of it is both parents have to work to survive, right? And that sucks. I think we've created a society where that happens more often than it should. And then, you're in a trap. How do you have time for the kids?
Well, what is it? The movie Idiocracy?
Yeah.
Right?
We're living there.
I haven't seen
You haven't seen Idiocracy?
No,
dude, that's a waste of 2 hours. You'll have a great time, though.
It's good research.
Yeah, but I mean, it talks about like, you got these two responsible people and they want to have kids. And like, we're just going to wait until, we get to the point that we can really afford a good life. And they go on and they do these things like, oh, well, he has a promotion at job. And by the time they're like 48 or something, they're like, oh, now, he has these medical issues and blah, blah. And eventually they can't have kids, right? And then so their bloodline just ends. And then you got other people that are just like, well, we're just going to have kids. And they just have kids, and they don't take care of them. And the next thing you know, the pool is just,
oh my goodness,
right?
Yeah.
Like everybody that's trying to be responsible isn't able to benefit from having children. And it's just, it's crazy.
I'm gonna watch that. We are living in that a little bit, right? Because like you said, it's been incentivized so much.
Yeah. It is, and it's
to have more kids,
right?
And we all,
we've all seen it on the street, right? It's not. And it's not. It's all races. I'm not saying it's anybody in particular. It's all of them.
Right.
Well,
right.
it's the age that we live in, this digital age, and I don't want to blame everything on the digital age, but what the digital age has done is created this microwave mentality, and it's created this false sense of success. If I'm not driving the nicest car, the nicest house, living in the nicest neighborhood, I'm a failure, which it drives people into depression. And
Yep.
it's just like a cycle. And so one of the things I want to do is I also want to create opportunities and pathways that get these kids away from our screens in schools. Again, the screens are really killing our kids in many different ways. So there's a handful of ideas and topics I want to run on, but I don't want to forget you because you brought up fire.
Yeah.
And fire is
That's
a
big one, dude.
It's a huge one, and this sounds like a talking point. It is, but but it's true. We don't have a water problem. We have a water storage problem, and I'll be the first to tell you I'm not the smartest guy in the room. But in 2025,
you might be in this room just for the record.
I don't think
easily.
Just saying.
But in 2025, I find it hard to believe how we can't find methods to store water that we get. And when I started looking into the bureaucracies of it, when I started seeing that they were trying to protect certain fish, which is why we didn't do fire cleanup in forest. And like that to me is idiotic. And if I'm just being blunt, I love animals. I mean, I'm not going to say I love animals, but not at the expense of keeping humans safe. And, you know, one of the good analogies of this is our canines as police officers. How much do we love our canines? Mm-hmm. I mean, officers, there's nobody that loves a dog more than a canine handler. Like the affection I see them show that dog, and you know the relationship and the bond that they have with that dog.
That's their partner.
That's their partner, and you see it even when a canine is hurt in the line of duty. But at the end of the day, you mentioned something. What is a canine at the end of the day?
It's a tool.
It's a tool. And if we get to a point to where now we start treating them like human beings, and now we start taking care of the animals more than we actually start taking care of the humans. Why do we send dogs into homes before we send a human being in there? To keep humans safe. It doesn't sound right. It sounds terrible. But if you really think about it, why would we send a dog into an unknown building before the officers? To essentially be the sacrifice for us if we need to. And so my point in bringing that up is that I think the bureaucracies of certain things is we are trying to do things in the name of keeping people happy or keeping, you know, a certain group happy because of the fish that lives here or whatever. But it's like, if we can hold water and that could potentially be used for not something that's a matter of if, but when, then we are doing a disservice to them for not doing it. Yeah. Gordon Graham, you're from CHP. Gordon Graham is a good friend of mine. He spoke at my event last week. I mean, he's a mentor to me, and he started this company called LexiPaul, and he is an expert in risk management. And one of the things that
I watched a lot of his videos.
I'm sure he did. I'm sure we all did. We all did.
Yeah.
And one of the things that Gordon always said was predictable is preventable. Fires are predictable, which is why a lot of our insurance companies left. Farmers insurance. People blame farmers. Why do you blame farmers? They are a business. They are an entity. It's their job to make money. So why are you mad at an organization that's saying, hey, if you guys don't fix this fire issue, we're going to leave because we're not about to cover this amount of this amount of damage.
Doesn't make sense. Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. So you're mad at farmers, and I get it. But at the same time, it's like, no, you should be mad at the people that have caused this situation. If we would have been cutting down the forest, if we would have been making sure there was water in the reservoirs, we would have never had to worry about the insurance companies leaving, and we wouldn't have had the damage that we saw in the latest fires that happened in California.
Policies made the state uninsurable.
Correct.
It's not the insurance company's fault for leaving.
Correct.
And you've got the California Fair Plan, the unfair plan is what I call it. And for example, for those that don't know, so my parents had a home in Northern California. They had some acreage, but whatever. Nice home. They sold it recently for $850,000. So that gives you a reference on the price of the home. Their wildfire insurance went up. They got dropped by their primary, and then they got on the unfair plan, and it went to $13,000 a year for wildfire.
Can't afford that.
It's a mortgage.
And they're on a fixed income. And that is happening all over the state. We hear that a lot from people that are like, hey, like we cannot afford this. So they're either uninsuring their homes, but if they have a loan, they can't do that. So they have to sell it. If they own the home outright, they don't have to have insurance, but damn, that's risky. A ton of people in Paradise were in that situation. They had no insurance. They're completely out.
Yeah, and the same thing happened in Altadena fires. You had people that inherited those homes.
Yes.
And so when those fires happened, a lot of them probably didn't even have the insurance because they never had insurance when they inherited the home.
Or they couldn't afford it.
They couldn't afford the insurance. So that is really the fault of the government. You know, the fault of the government is you're the ones that's supposed to be putting these measures in place for us to have a fail safe. If everything goes wrong, then these measures are in place. But when you fail us like that is when I have issues. That's when I'm like, you know what, this could have been prevented. That's the sad thing. And I think it's issues like that of why we're starting to see California starting to think differently on how they vote. But at the end of the day, it's always going to come down to, though, is it the right person that can get their vote?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So what do you think the biggest, I got to ask about Gavin Newsom. Okay. Have you met Gavin Newsom?
No, I've not.
Okay. I'm sure you will at some point.
Hope not.
Well, I'd love to see a debate. I would enjoy that.
It would be great, right? What are the big failures right now that you see that he's doing in California?
So there's two separate answers to that. You know, from a leadership standpoint, he's trying to appease a small group of people. It was evident when he came out to he's trying, now that he wants to run for president, he's now going on, you know, what was his name? Charlie Kirk's podcast, trying to come across as more of a moderate. How do you come across as more of a moderate when the last 7 years you have been completely opposite of that?
Right. Yep.
So from a leadership standpoint, he's only trying to do things to appease the people, his constituents, as opposed to doing things that are good leadership, regardless of what some of the people may think. Nobody will ever agree with every leader, but I would agree with a leader that actually is truly has a conviction about his direction he wants to go and truly believes it's the best thing for the state, as opposed to somebody that's just capitulating just to make sure that I get likes. So that's number one of his issues. Number two, from a policy standpoint, he is prioritize the minority as opposed to the majority. So because you have a loud minority, you have now made them the priority, and now you've forgotten about the silent majority. And I think that's why we saw this presidential election go the way it did, is because they were so focused on making the small percentage of people, making them the focus, that they completely lost 80% of the voters. So I think from a policy standpoint, he's really failed in that regard, and it's evident all over, and we've seen it.
Well, we talked about this today. You know, I was talking to him about the state flags and everything else, and how you exclude people when you try to appease a minority group, right? Even if you try to appease a majority group, really what you want to do is you want to look for those definitions that people that they can hang their hat under, right? The American flag, holding up the American flag, should not exclude anybody in the country, right? That really should be an all-encompassing flag. It should be a symbol, and people should embrace that. That's our heritage. That's who we are. And we talked about down in Idaho, you know, they have the Idaho state flag, which obviously encompasses everybody in Idaho, and then they raised the pride flag in Boise.
I'm just glad you brought it up this time, and I wasn't the bad guy to
Absolutely.
bring it up.
No, I have
David,
no
finally.
problem
Thank
bringing
you
it
for that.
up, because once again, it's nothing against any of my friends that are LGBTQ or anything else like that. It comes down to, now we're flying a flag at a state capitol, right? That's supposed to represent America first, Idaho second, and now third we represent LGBTQ.
So here's the issues with that. I have no problem if you want to fly an LGBTQ flag in front of your house.
Same.
No problems.
Same.
If you have a private business, fly it there. But you're talking about state buildings. You know, it's the complete opposite now of what you're fighting for. The American flag, I believe, is an all-inclusive flag, no doubt about it. But when you start doing other flags, what happens if I want you to fly a Christian flag? Yeah. Why can't you fly a Christian flag because now you got to represent me, right? Now, so when you open Pandora's box, now what if a Satanist comes up and says, well, if the Christian guy gets his Christian flag up, I want my Satanist flag to go up. Yep. So we have to get to a place of balance. I have nothing. I have friends of mine that are part of the LGBTQ community. You know, love them to death. Nothing against you. But the point is that when you start talking about state buildings and the state of California and America, to your point, the American flag is, in my mind, one of the most all-inclusive flags. Now, I know I'll have pushback from people on the other side that say, well, this country hasn't given me or hasn't given us the freedoms that it claims. But here's my response to that is, we live in a state, we live in a country, whereas a black man, an African-American man, I have the opportunity to run for governor of California. You tell me that we don't have those freedoms. I mean, I have the ability as a black man in America, and as a black man in California, I have the ability to go out there and run a business, a successful business. It doesn't mean that my road has been easy. It doesn't mean that I haven't had discrimination against me. It doesn't mean that people aren't going to like me. But when we started this podcast today, I told you guys my story about being the walk-on for a reason. It wasn't to tell you guys that, hey, I walked on a UNLV. I wanted you guys to know, look, I have a track record of overcoming and going against the grain and being an underdog. And I will never let anybody tell me something I can or can't do. I'm going to go bet on myself like we talked about earlier. I'm going to put God first, and I'm just going to be obedient to where he tells me to go, and I'm going to do it. And so if you want to push back to me and say, well, this isn't a state that gives us the opportunity and the freedoms, You're wrong. Why? Because I'm living proof. And I'm not blind. I'm not oblivious to know that there are certain communities, certain places across our country that, yes, you might be more at a disadvantage. But even if you are at a disadvantage, that's the reason more you should have a bigger chip on your shoulder to succeed. So you can break the cycle. So you can get your kids out of that situation. And now you have a new generation of kids that say, look what grandpa did, look what grandma did, and look where we're at now.
It's wild to me, and I love hearing you say that. But it's wild to me what demographics will tell you and try to explain to you that you're marginalized. You just don't know it. You'll take it from the great majority, right? And a lot of it, just call it out. Middle-aged white women will come back and say, no, you are marginalized because you're of color. You don't have the same opportunities because they've been whipped into believing that they've been giving all this credit or favor because of their race or because of their sex.
Here's the thing, is even if that was true, and even if it is true in certain places, which I believe we still live in a state, and we talked about it yesterday, there are places that are just far left and far right, and yeah, I can be marginalized. But even if that is true, should I let that stop me? Should I let that give me this?
Or define you.
Define me. No. Like, when I used to put on my pads and go play football, my dad would tell me every time I suited up, he said, Ryan, they put on pads just like you. Mm-hmm. And he was right. I have the opportunity every day I wake up to go out there and make something of myself. It's up to me to do it or not. Regardless if somebody says I can or I can't. If somebody says I can't, I go find an alternate way. So there are times where, yes, it gets frustrating. There are times where I have no doubt about it been discriminated against. I absolutely. Mm-hmm. But is that going to define who I am? Absolutely not. And it's not even been discrimination simply because of my skin color sometimes. Sometimes it's just been because I'm a young cop and you're an old cop and you think it should be this way and I think it should be this way.
Or you're a cop in general.
Or I'm a cop.
Yeah.
So where does it stop?
And I think it's hard with that definition because when we go back to the flags, when you fly a flag, you're defining the people underneath it, right? And there's people that are resistant to being defined as American because of the president or because of a policy or something else. There's people that, don't want to be defined as a Californian anymore because it's gone crazy and whatever else. But I guarantee when you start picking select groups, there's absolutely a majority of people that say that doesn't define me. No longer, you start losing your value when you're looking at something. And I get it, right? There are people here that they've immigrated from whatever country and they see that flag still, right? Let's just say Mexico. They've come here from Mexico. They see that Mexican flag and they're like, all right, like that is a definition of me. But when you absorb a culture, when you come somewhere for a reason, when you have that, you have to be able to understand that I'm redefining myself, right? I made this choice for my family, for whatever it is or anything else, to be able to be redefined by these things. There's not a lot of people that are saying, hey, go ahead and fly the blue line flag and I'm going to redefine myself, or the rainbow flag and I'm going to redefine myself. That's not something that's all inclusive for anybody.
Well, when I first got into law enforcement, I never really rocked or wore any thin blue line stuff. And it wasn't because I didn't like the thin blue line. But I recognize that the thin blue line meeting was something different for me than it was people in certain communities. And if my job was to bridge gaps, to bridge divides, if I walked into a community with a thin blue line shirt on, before anything came out of my mouth, they were already going to judge me. So going back to that point is certain symbols could be divisive. And if my job is to be inclusive, really true inclusivity, then let's remove all the identifiers and say, let's actually connect on a humanistic level. And then we can bring in those things that makes up your identity as a person. The problem is that those identifiers become your identity as a human being. And that's the problem. My only identity is found in Christ. And the reason that is because if that wasn't the case, then I will always find short. I will find myself forever chasing whatever is going to bring fulfillment at that moment in time. We talked about this yesterday. There's a lot of people in our professions, in fire and law enforcement, they find their identity in that badge in their profession. And the moment they don't get a promotion, the moment they don't get a special assignment, we see them get angry. We see them get bitter. And it happens to all of us. I've been there before. And what I realized is I said, my identity is so tied up in this job that I'm letting them define who I am, as opposed to me saying, you know what, I know who I am regardless of what position I hold. So I think if we can get back to these people and say, like, forget what everybody else thinks about you. I'm talking to everybody on all sides of the equation, on the far left, the far right. Forget what people think about you. What do you see yourself as? And you go out there and do what you want to do. And as a governor, I'm not going to enforce upon everybody and say, you need to think this way, or you need to think that way. We live in the United States of America. We have the ability to think and breathe and do everything that we want to do. It's just my job to attach some constraints to make sure there's a level of control and decency and humanity for the society that we live in.
Yes. Can we talk about riots?
Oh, yeah. And my clubs are at your house, by the way.
Noted.
They made it?
Yes, I got to pick those up.
Oh, man.
Everybody
You guys
ever
don't-
tell you look like Joe Rogan from the side, bro?
Oh, dude, do I take my hat off right now?
Yeah.
There we
He's
go.
bald, too.
Bald,
He's bald, too.
There
All
we
right,
go.
let's go.
does.
I'm on the faux Rogan podcast right
All
now.
right. Yeah, I know. I know you said Trump went on everybody's podcast. So he hit all the good ones. He missed this one.
Yeah,
I don't know.
obviously.
It's a faux Rogan.
Yeah, no. So you guys don't know, he was flying from Wisconsin yesterday, and he was supposed to go to Denver and then Oakland and then here. And I'm like, damn, dude. And then his flight was getting delayed and everything else. I'm like, oh man, you might miss your connector. So I just jumped on. I'm like, look, we'll get you up here. Let's come straight from Denver. So we put him on that, and then that flight, he gets deboarded off that because there's a dent in the plane. They got to check, make sure it's not cracked underneath. All this stuff.
The same
Right?
day that
What hit
plane
it?
crash goes down, I'm like, hey, y'all fix that dent,
Yeah,
bro.
yeah,
I
yeah.
saw what
Go,
happened.
take your time.
I'm actually good with this
Take your
today.
time.
Yeah.
So he gets delayed to where his flight isn't even coming until pretty much when the other one does. And then his bags end up going to Oakland. We get there, we're waiting for his golf clubs. And then turns out, I'm like, man, I'm glad, we were like, well, he should have just stayed on the regular plane. Well, his clubs didn't make it last night because he would have been late for his connector. He wouldn't even have been here today. So it's been fun. We tried to pop the tire on the truck on the way back by hitting something on the freeway. So
Nice.
Side note, real quick, did you see that guy from that Indian crash, that the one lone survivor?
Yeah.
One dude
That jumped off the
Wild.
plane?
Wait,
you
what?
you better be talking to God. One guy walked
You didn't
away.
hear
Yeah,
about that?
survived
No.
it, dude.
He was in seat 11.
He was-
I got you seat 11, dude. I got you seat 11.
Well,
Hey.
you know what's funny? What's funny is, I mean, I shouldn't be laughing because that was a very, very tragic event. But what's crazy about that is when I was sitting down, I was like looking at the emergency exit. I'm like, well, if everything goes down, I know there's a chance of survival. I'm going to jump out that plane,
Yeah,
bro.
dude. did it.
That was
Yep.
amazing.
Wait. So he jumped out prior to the crash?
No, we don't know. I don't know
We
that.
don't know. Okay.
At some point, he jumped out. We know that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he survived.
He walked away.
The
dude.
lone survivor.
Dude, and that plane was wrecked.
I just saw the fireball.
so-
Yeah.
And,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh.
that's crazy.
Dude.
So
Cool.
terrible. But
I'm so excited to fly soon. Thank you for bringing
thank
that
you.
up.
Well, you made it here safely, so that's
Yeah.
good. But yeah, anyways, go on to
riots.
riots.
Riots. This is near and dear to my heart, dude. I was on the riot team for a long time, so I've been to all of them in the last 10 years. Like, what is going on down there? How do you handle that as governor?
So, as governor, number one is, I think that one of the great things about living in California, and again, I keep bringing up the United States because California is a part of the United States. We have the freedom to protest peacefully. That's legit. Like, if you don't like something, go and protest peacefully. But when you start breaking the law, when you start putting other people in danger, when you start vandalizing property, when you start assaulting police officers, that there needs to be some accountability and order that needs to be brought to that. So as governor, if I actually made a post on this the other day. I said, as governor, what I would do is I would not tie the hands of my local law enforcement leaders. I would tell every single one of my local law enforcement leaders, you guys have a full capacity to go out there and enforce the law courteously and appropriately, whatever you need to do to get control of the situation. Don't hold back. Do it within the confines of the law. Make sure you're treating people decently, but you are not going to get attacked. That's the first thing I would do. So now, as a chief of police, I'm like, all right, cool. I know that I'm not going to be criticized when I go tell my guys to go out there and make sure we get our city secure. But what do we see? No, we saw everybody sitting on their hands saying, oh, it's not as bad as you think they did. Oh, shame on you for sending in the National Guard, so forth and so on. The National Guard, people forget, we call the National Guard for everything. So they made it seem like the National Guard was this huge, big old deal when we call the National Guard for everything.
They were. It's like not the first time, right? They were at George Floyd. I was there.
Yeah.
They were all over Sacramento.
Correct.
So it's
we
not
call
like,
we call them for the fires.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
call
natural
it
disasters,
natural-
absolutely.
So I get where they're trying to, but the thing that was inciting, and people were trying to point the blame on the president. Again, this is not me being pro-Trump or nothing like that. I'm just removing any of that. People were trying to make this about him. And what incited the violence more was the people out there that were trying to causing damage to the protest. Meanwhile, what people don't realize is that there are people that come to these protests not because they're protesting immigration. They're coming because it's an opportunity to come cause chaos and all this other mass hysteria. They're not there for the purpose of the protest. But the people that are there for the protest, it riles them up because like, yeah, we're fighting this cause. So as governor, we need to make sure, like, look, I'm going to allow you to peacefully protest all you want. And actually, I think it's okay. Yeah, I think we should revisit some of the immigration laws and what we could do if there is. I think that nothing is ever good for a life of anything. I hate, one of the biggest things I hated in law enforcement the most, where this is how we've always done it, so this is how we're going to do it.
Yeah.
I hate that.
Classic.
I hate
Monkey
that.
see, monkey do.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the law should be the same thing. Let's revisit certain things. If we can do it better, great. If not, then oh well. But don't get lawless. Like, don't start committing crazy acts. And so I truly believe if I was governor, I would not tie the hands of my local law enforcement leaders, and I would make it so we didn't have to call the National Guard. But we talk about dominoes, and that's a domino effect too. Why do we have to call National Guard? Well, people forget the number one problem in law enforcement and even fire right now is recruiting and retention. It's the number one problem in law enforcement right now. So you're talking about LA, one of the biggest cities in our country, and you now have to take how many resources to go and prevent these riots from getting even bigger. But meanwhile, 911 calls are still going on. People are still calling 911 for, whatever got going on. So that's why other resources are called into play, because again, if you don't have those resources, then you're going to get a lawsuit on the back end because you didn't respond to my 911 emergency in the appropriate time.
Yeah. Yep. 100%.
And they don't have enough bodies to fill them. And frankly, I can't blame them. You couldn't pay me enough money to be a cop in that city the way it is right now, because that at a city and state level, they do not have your back.
We have personally helped at least 6, 7, 8, I don't know, cops move from California up to this area to join the departments up here.
One of them is LAPD Skid Row. He worked Skid Row beat for 10 years. And he said, you'll never not see a smile on my face. Is our agency perfect here? No. But it's a lot better than there.
Yeah.
It's hard when any mistakes are made or you get put on the stand and you get crucified within the confines a lot of times of your policies and everything else, right? I mean, you get these people, you talk about, officers that, they end up in a bad situation and they follow their policies. They do what they're allowed to do. They've hit it on the head and they still get put through the ringer. And you're like, man, how does that make you feel that you did everything right and you're still in a position where you're the bad guy?
Oh, trial by media, man.
Yep.
They don't
so
care.
Hard, it's the political pressures, and it's sad and it's wrong. And again, as governor, I want to try to remove all those political pressures. And the great thing, I keep going back to this. I hate saying track record because every time I hear track record, it makes me sound like a politician. But my track record when it comes to public safety and as it relates to law enforcement is I call balls and strikes. So I am somebody that if I see that there has been some law enforcement misconduct, I'll stand true on it and say, hey, look, there's some misconduct here. We could have did it better, but it's an isolated incident. It's not a systematic issue. But I will defend all of our cops out there, even if they may have a use of force that looks bad from a perceptual standpoint, number one, being involved in law enforcement and knowing that there's always more than meets the eye. Number two, also being able to think reasonably. I can also stand firm and defend those who actually have done this job appropriately, even though everybody is against them.
Who's made a rapid decision in a critical incident before.
Yeah.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah, it's so hard, man, to try to take everything in. And you talk about making those, putting people through those scenarios, right? Didn't you say you did that?
Yeah, Switch. We have a YouTube series called Switch where we switch the roles between law enforcement and civilians.
I love that.
And it's awesome. We've had celebrities on. We had Terry Crews on. We've had Redman.
I've seen the one with Terry Crews. It was cool.
Yeah.
I want to see that one.
Yeah, we've had DJ. We had Terry Crews did an active shooter one. It was.
And he's like, oh my God.
We actually slapped him in the face on one of the scenarios.
Did you really?
Yeah,
was it you? Did you
it
slap
wasn't
him?
me. I was too nervous to do that.
Seth, you do that.
I slapped Terry Crews and be like, hey, we good?
Yeah. You'd have to jump.
That it does. It puts things. I remember we did that with San Bernardino, man. We had an issue with staffing. I talked to you about staffing before. Like, man, if I was put back in that position as chief and they told me like, hey, we got to keep the station open, I go, hey, we're closing it. Like our guys are burnt today. They're going home. We don't have enough staffing.
Yeah.
We got to protect them first, right? But we did that with the board of supervisors. Brought them in, put them all in turnouts, took them through just a regular burn box. It's all propane, and you have a little Class A fire in the back. But for the most part, it's just hot, and you got to pull hose through there. And we're like, all right, this is what we got to do. So we're gonna put two of you through, and they'd have to go in and grab a body and pull that person out, and they come out and they're like, oh yeah, dude, you can't do that with two people.
You develop a huge. One of my best friends, he did that switch, and he was not pro police by any means, and he would always actually be pretty critical of law enforcement. And so we put him on that same episode with Terry Crews. He did the active shooter scenario, And we used blank guns, so it was actual like gunshots
loud,
going off.
yeah.
It was loud. And then the suspects had airsoft rifles, and those things come really hot.
Yeah, they suck.
Oh yeah,
They hurt really, really bad. And so they were like whizzing by him. And after it was all said and done, Markel was asked a question. Markel's my friend. He was like, so, what do you think now? And he's like, I got one word for law enforcement: respect.
Yeah.
That's cool.
A little different.
That's nice to be able to switch that.
It is, again, but it's about understanding the psychology of how we are wired as humans. It's easy to Monday morning quarterback when you're not involved in it. But when you are able to immerse somebody in a scenario and you create this level of empathy that now allows him to see things from a different perspective, it changes everything. And law enforcement needs to do the same thing with the community. Gordon, I look up to this dude in so many different ways. And he always said, like, he asked me the question, what's one quality, if you can have a good police officer, somebody comes and interviews, what's one quality that you would absolutely want them to have? And, before I, knew where he was going with it, I was like, integrity. He's like, integrity is important. Honesty, yeah, it's important. Respect, yes. He was like, empathy. Empathy is one of the most valuable traits that because if a person has empathy, it allows them to be able to be human with the people that they're going to serve the most. And I was like, man, that actually resonates with me a lot. And I think it's the same thing that I'm going to take into this position as governor.
That's awesome. And, you talk to me about your background and everything else. I think you can relate to a lot of people that others can't. I don't think Gavin Newsom can relate to those people. I don't think Kamala Harris can.
I like that, man. And even Chad Bianco, who like up here in North Idaho, he'd rock it, right? Everybody
He'd kill
would
it,
be-
yeah.
But you get a state like that, and I think it is more important to find somebody that can unite.
Yeah.
We need that as a country too, man. Like everybody's so entrenched. I mean, we talk about this kind of stuff all the time. We're more on the right side up here, but still, like we also understand. We love everybody. We want everybody to succeed.
Yeah.
We want, that's just what it is, man. Like,
Yeah, you don't want to neglect, you shouldn't neglect people. If you talk about our walk as Christians, like, God doesn't want us just to associate with just Christian people.
right.
Like he wants us to be around everybody. That's the best way. You're like a living, to the person that's never read the Bible before, you should be yourself a living, breathing Bible. It's the same kind of concept. You may not agree with somebody on the left, but that doesn't mean you just isolate them. Now, don't get me wrong. There's certain people I probably can't,
Right.
be around a
You
long
may
time.
not- you may not
And that's okay.
Yeah.
But a majority of the people are not going to be these extremists that we all perceive.
Here's the thing, man. When you bring up Jesus, you bring up God and everything else, and the fact that he wants to love everybody, and it doesn't matter your side or anything else like that. People that don't believe in him, but I'll tell you what, he also doesn't appease to anybody.
No.
Right? He doesn't turn around and say, "Let me change my policies so that it makes you feel better." He has the empathy. He has more empathy than any one of us.
No, correct.
But he doesn't turn around and say, "Hey, you know what? We'll make that okay this time."
Correct.
Or I'm going to agree with you just because I
Correct.
want to make you feel good.
No, he's stern.
Here's the standard. Right,
Exactly.
and we're gonna stand by this.
Correct.
And I think, nobody's ever gonna get close to that. But I think if we take those values and, like you said, you come in with some empathy, you come in with understanding that people may not agree with you, they may disagree with your policies, your procedures, your thoughts, your faith, and you're able to say, "Look, dude, I still want you. I still want to participate. I still want to hear you. You have a voice, and it's important." Dude, that's what a lot of people want. They want to be heard.
Yep.
Ooh, question. I know you got a very short time.
you're good.
Second Amendment.
Oh, great. I'm glad you brought this up.
Oh,
I've been
boy.
getting this a lot. So I was actually on Calling the Wars podcast too.
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, I love that stuff.
Yeah. And so he brought up that. So I'm a firm believer in the Second Amendment. I'm a huge believer in the Second Amendment for many reasons. But I think, again, there could be balance and we got to do it the right way. So number one is I always use this example with people. If a critical incident happens right now, who's going to be the first people to show up? Is it going to be the Navy SEALs? Is it going to be the Marines? Is it going to be the Green Berets? No, it's not. Usually you'll probably have a law enforcement response within 7 to 8 minutes on average. But before that, if you have people that are armed, they can now create some opposition to the threat. And so as police officers, we all know that as a criminal, you're looking for the path of least resistance. And so you have somebody that you can put between the threat and the people that are innocent bystanders, then great. But it doesn't mean that we are, lackluster about, how we do these things. For so long, we have villainized the guns. I'm technically still not a gun guy. I own quite a few guns, but I'm still not technically a gun guy. But before I became, understood what guns were, I almost villainized it too, because I'm like, oh my goodness, they're so dangerous, and which they are. I'm not downplaying that. But we forget it's not the gun, it's the person that pulls the trigger on the gun. So you want to do all these things to create all these laws, but yet we're still having these different issues. So why not focus on the people that are committing these crimes and understanding why they actually did it in the first place, and actually go that direction, as opposed to just saying, oh, it's the gun's fault, it's the gun's fault. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have certain standards and regulations. I definitely think there needs to be some type of balance and guidelines, but that doesn't go against the Second Amendment. But making sure that, hey, look, you know what? We need to assess who's getting access to the guns, like criminals. Like I always tell people, I've never arrested somebody that didn't lawfully own a gun. Every single person I arrested that had a gun, they didn't lawfully own it. So much for your gun laws, like, because they're still getting the guns. Right. They're still getting them somehow. So my point is that, like, let's just be smart. Let's be common sense with it. As a police officer, I understand the inherent dangers, no doubt about it, that guns create. But I think it's more so a person problem than an actual gun problem.
Yeah. Well said.
Society's changing like that.
As governor, the chippies are going to be doing your detail, right?
I do know that.
Yeah, bro.
I do know that. Shout out to the chippies out there. I'm gonna play every time we go somewhere. I'm gonna play the Chips music in the background.
They would appreciate it. There's some studs, great men and women in doing the detail for the governor's protective detail. So you'd be in good hands.
Well, I'm hoping, man. I hope that there's that unification. The reason we wanted you up here, a lot of people that watch this podcast, I said, are a lot of people considering leaving California. And so, we kind of put that out there. We always, we get hit on all the time. People are like, oh, you're just trying to make everybody move out of California. No, we're not. We got people that are looking up here, and we want to make sure that they know our personalities and who we are, because if we can help people, we'd love to. But for those of you that are sitting there in California and you're saying, man, we wish we could stay here. We wish there was change coming. Like, this is an opportunity. And hanging out with you today, getting to know you, man, I'll tell you what, it was so cool, because when I text you, if you text somebody that's running for governor, you expect either a half-assed response, if any. Next thing you know, I get a video message from this guy like, hey, what's up? This is Ryan. I'm like, oh, this is crazy. So the fact that you're willing to engage people, even people outside of your state, like just being able to build those relationships, I think that's something that we miss from actual politicians, right? Because it's always what am I going to get from you? Right? What am I going to get for? Why should I communicate with you? Why should I? So I love the fact that you reached out to us and that you were willing to communicate with us before we brought up anything else. That's been super special, and hopefully people in California recognize that there is an opportunity to not blend everybody, but be able to find some commonality that's going to get rid of two crazy opposing sides. And just an all-out war. I mean, to be able to bring people together is huge.
Yeah, I don't necessarily want people to be blended. I'm not no kumbaya person that we all need to get along. That's not me. But I do truly believe that we all can coexist with each other, with one another, without hostility. And the sooner we can do that, the better we're going to find success. There was a study that was done that said 52% of Californians believe that our best days are behind us. I'm a crazy enough guy to believe that our best days are ahead of us, but it's up to us to make sure that happens. And the only way you make that happen is to put good leaders in position to do that. And we have to be able to wake up and open up and be open to new things. Like, let's stop being the definition of insanity. From the Democratic standpoint, I mean, you guys have had how long to run our state? And yet we're in this position. So I'm not saying this is a partisan issue per se, but that to me says, no, maybe it is time to try something new at the very least. Yeah. So, I'm excited, man, win or lose. I want to be able to go to my deathbed and say, like, I left it all on the field. Like, when I played football, the coach would always ask, like, did you leave it all on the field? And I want to live my life that way. Like, when I'm done, like, there's not too many people that can say, man, you ran for governor. Like, nah, we did that. God, you put this on my heart. I'm going to be obedient to you, and I'm going to go after it. So let's get it.
Yep. Yeah, no regrets. Man, I commend you. I think it's an uphill battle with our two-party system because they have so much power and authority.
It's crazy.
They've made it that way for a reason. So I think even it's one of those jobs where sometimes I think elections are too celebrated when one person wins, because why are you celebrating? It's time to go to work.
Correct.
Now you've got work to do.
Correct.
Right? Like you're trying to take on a position in one of the most influential states that's been the most impacted by really piss-poor policies. It's a lot of work, bro.
Last thing I'm going to say before we wrap it up. This is a cool story, and I didn't share this with you earlier. But a few months ago, there's been times on this campaign where I've been up and down because I'm like, man, this is such a tall task. It's a Mount Everest climb. And I've been asking God, like, God, I don't know if this is what I need to do. And And so I one morning I woke up and just the Spirit of God on me was like, hey, go, I want you to go study about the life of Gideon in the Bible. And I kind of studied about Gideon a little bit, but not too much. And so I would go and study about Gideon, and I learned that God called him from the least expected person to go and basically be a warrior to win back, the Israel, essentially. So Gideon is not trusting God at all, and so he asked God for multiple signs. He asked him for 3 specific signs, and God gives him 3 clear as day signs that this is what I want you to do. So Gideon's getting ready to do the assignment. He gets his army up to 30,000 people. God says, cut it down to 300. And Gideon's like, what the heck do you mean cut it down to 300? I got a freaking war, like a battle, like we're ready. Cut it down to 300 because when you win, I don't want you to get the glory. I want to get the glory. So Gideon cuts his army down to 300. Boom, he's ready to go. This is where the movie 300 comes from, which is what I like. So cuts it down to 300. He goes to battle with 300 soldiers, and they start taking over everything. They are winning everything. He actually gives them one last sign before he goes and does it just to give them that reaffirmation. So at the end of the story, Gideon does it. He trusts God. He conquers everything, and he becomes that guy. So I'm reading, and so the revelation I got was you have not because you ask not. So I said, all right, God, like, I'm going to ask for a sign. I'm human just like Gideon is. I'm the least expected person. Give me a sign that this is what you want me to do. So I wrote it in my journal. I journaled it. I prayed about it that day. The next day, I was at a school speaking. And as I'm at the school speaking, I'm doing my thing, and I get off the stage. This one kid comes up to me. He's like, man, thank you so much, Ryan. Like, you killed it. It really resonated with me a lot. I lost my dad, so you just really connected. And I was like, yeah, no problem, man. No worries. I said, man, if you don't mind me asking, I said, what's your name? He said, man, my name is Gideon.
No.
I said, no, wait, the day after.
That's
the day
crazy.
after I got done studying.
gosh,
I was like, so my eyes got all wide. I was like, are you serious? He was like, yeah, I know it's a biblical name. I said, no, I'm not tripping because it's a biblical name. I said, I literally just asked God for a sign, and he sends me a Gideon the day after. I've never met a Gideon in my life.
I've still never met a Gideon.
And I meet this guy the day after. And so I just say that story to say is like, I know the battle that we have is Mount Everest. Mm-hmm. But that's how, for me, where my faith comes in, that's where God gets glory. God does things in unwinnable circumstances. He did that with me in my walk-on story. He did that with me in my success as a business owner, my success as an influence, whatever. So why not is what I come back down to, is why not go after it? Why not? Because what does it do for the next generation of kids? When you go to a classroom and you say, you can go run for governor. You can be president of the United States. You can be a Fortune 500 business owner. You can do, like, what does it do? What does it say to that next generation? It's like, man, if he can do it, why not me? So that's why we're going to do it. And I really feel good about what we're doing. And we've already seen so much success. And so for those of you guys listening, if you guys are interested in, California and you guys are still there, hold on until the election is over. And if I lose, then y'all feel free to bounce. But in order for me, if you really believe in me, the best thing you guys can do is go to tillman26.com. That's my website. It's our campaign website. We're looking for volunteers, and we are looking for money. Unfortunately, I hate this about politics, but in order to actually start changing things, you got to go play the game that's played, and we need money in order to continue to do the things that we're doing. So I appreciate you guys so much for having me on. This has been awesome.
Yeah.
So with all those links and everything else in the comments. And
Yep. Ryan Tillman, bro. Thank you. Keep breaking barriers.
Thanks, fellas. Appreciate you. God bless.
Later.